You're watching The Roach on Florida TV.
The conspiracy theories surrounding 9/11, I think, I'm not going to say that a lot of what we have today comes from that, but that was a pretty big thing 15 years ago. And it is, it's largely been forgotten, but a lot of the folks that we see in the world of conspiracy theories today sort of started in 9/11. Alex Jones being one of the big examples of that. I mean, that was the beginnings of InfoWars and the beginnings of his moment in the conspiracy theory sun was 9/11. And that was both of those conspiracy theories come from these major traumatic moments within the United States and were extremely mass mediated. With the Kennedy assassination, it was right at the moment when network television news had become a big thing, that the diffusion of televisions into people's homes had really grown considerably, and the networks had become the network television news anchors had become major figures in people's lives. And 9/11 happens as broadband internet is rolling out and becoming increasingly pervasive. And more people are utilizing the internet as a way of finding out about news and communicating with each other and other things like that. And so I think there's an important relationship there that both keep those conspiracy theories alive in our imagination and in the sort of history of conspiracy theories, but are related to our experience of those particular media, which I think helps keep those things really big.
9/11 is one that I don't know if it's a conspiracy. The thing that bothers me the most about it, and I've read and watched a lot of videos about it, I don't know how you can go through all the facts of 9/11 and not at least scratch your head and go, that's odd. I don't understand how. Listen, here's what I'll tell you about this. I don't think George Bush and Dick Cheney were sitting off to the side like Wile E. Coyote with a thing, and it went 3, 2, 1. Okay, I don't believe that at all. But when you look at the different things, like obviously Building 7, the way both those towers came down, when you look at the hole inside the Pentagon and you go, where are the wings to the plane? When you look at one of the passports, a copy of the passport found on the sidewalk outside one of the buildings, you go, and there's about 20 other things I can name, you just scratch your head and go, yeah, that is a little weird, odd. Yeah. Now, maybe we're just connecting dots, but when I look at like a Building 7 falling, and I think some 1,500 architects around the world now all agree there's no way those buildings just fell down. Yeah, it is odd, and it's weird to me that when other people don't go, "Oh no, that's what happened." At least go, "It's weird, it's odd." Yeah. Don't just tell me it's normal.
Yeah, no, I mean I think similar things are said about the Kennedy assassination. Less so with engineering and architecture,
right,
and more with just the weird constellation of people who had something to do with something relating in some way to the assassination itself. And I think those aspects of both of those events are what make them so rich for conspiracy theories and why they continue to be gifts that keep giving to people who want to look more closely at them.
Do we just like to talk about it? Does that make us feel better to understand complicated, unanswered questions? Is the best way to attach it as a conspiracy? Is that how we settle horrifying things in our minds, maybe?
Well, I mean, I think that's an aspect of it. That both of these are fairly traumatic events. That the idea that a president could be assassinated by some crazy guy off the street, or the idea that we could be attacked and attacked with our own planes in a really anomalous way, seem really strange and put into doubt the kinds of things that we have been able as a country to mostly avoid over the last couple hundred years, except in the self-inflicted wound of the Civil War, of just that, we are impervious to attack. We are our own country and no one has the guts or the ability to come over and do anything bad to us. And so there is something to be said for an explanation of conspiracy theories like that that are just about helping us to explain our own failings to ourselves. Then there's also the puzzle aspect to it. I mean, I think that people enjoy conspiracy theories for the same reason that they enjoy, mystery novels and thrillers and jigsaw puzzles, for that matter. There is a real cognitive satisfaction that you get by putting pieces together to make a whole, to have things make sense.
Do you not look at 9/11, at least scratch your head on some of the issues?
I do. So
you're a smart. You're an educated man. So you even have a different perspective than a lot of people. You're a guy that's well-read, well-educated, knows law, knows a lot of subjects.
Right. Well, so I'm not an engineer. So the engineering parts of it are I have to trust the judgment of others on things like that. To me, the larger questions that are interesting, and why it is that I'm willing to hold out for a Kennedy assassination conspiracy and less so for 9/11, is that for there to have been someone other than Oswald to have shot Kennedy would not have required an enormous machinery at work. It could have been a small group of people who were able to successfully find a vulnerability, both with Oswald and with Kennedy's parade route and other things like that. And it wouldn't be that difficult to keep that secret among a small number of people. It would be really hard to have accomplished 9/11 in the way in which many of the conspiracies would have us believe, without having that come out. It's just too difficult.
Too many people that would be needed to be involved, whether they were planting explosives, or getting on the planes, and just somebody would come forward and speak.
Something would get disclosed. I mean, it is just so difficult, as we see with the president, who, it would require of the conspirators an enormous amount of organizational ability and omniscience and omnipresence, as well as the ability to keep a secret. And if anything we have learned over the last 100 years, no one keeps a secret.
Nobody can shut their mouth.
No one can shut their mouth. And, information just travels, sometimes just by mistake, something unravels and things come apart.
But then I think that when we talk about conspiracies, I think the government then can clear these things up. Like one of the perfect examples from 9/11, I don't know if you remember this, is first we were told all the cameras around the Pentagon were off. Do you remember that? There's 80-some cameras around the Pentagon. All of them were off on 9/11. Okay. Then suddenly you kind of heard that they were on, but the one camera where you see the plane and it's they would only release like 20 frames. Yeah. Why not just, there's so many people sitting out there going, just show us. We're not all going to die of some fuzzy video of a plane going into the Pentagon.
Right.
Just release it, show it, and then end it. Yeah. Why do you think with conspiracies the government just doesn't clear this up?
Well, it's not just a conspiracy thing. So the other book that I've written is about how government tries to manage information flow, and it does so very poorly. On the one hand, when you ask for information from government, it is extremely reluctant to do so. So we have a number of laws, both at the federal and state level, that require the disclosure of information. There are a lot of exceptions in the federal system that the government uses, sometimes takes advantage of in order to delay or try to keep from disclosing documents that they either don't want to disclose or they just don't want to disclose generally what it is that they're doing. In Florida, it's a little bit more difficult, but the tendency of bureaucracies, the tendency for all of us in our private and professional lives, is to try to keep from disclosing information, particularly when asked. I mean, it's one thing when you go on Facebook and without really realizing it, you're giving Facebook all this data about yourself, all this tracking stuff. But if Facebook were to come to you and to say, we want information from you, you're like, no way, I'm not going to give you that.
Right.
And, bureaucrats are like that. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that people don't really want to give up information that they have. They feel as though it's you're being insufficiently deferential to them, but also it's like, are you suggesting that I'm doing something? I couldn't possibly be doing something.
But like in the example I gave you, and I know you don't work for the Pentagon, so I don't expect you to have the answer to this. You're welcome. But if that would convince everyone, look, it's a big white plane or gray plane or whatever. Here it is. We're going to show you the video. Here it is. We're going to play it for you, and then we're going to take it away because we don't want that just circulating around. Here it is from 17 different angles.
Yeah.
But when they say they'll only release 4 more frames, and it's still, you can't tell whether that was a missile going in or you could end all this tonight. Why?
So, two responses. One, the official response might, there might be the reason that they give you, and there might be another reason, like we don't want people to know the particular location of cameras. The more information that we give, the more of our enemies would learn about us and our practices and the ways we act. That would be a typical response of the Department of Defense, which does not like to give out information, particularly relating to things relating to national security, like the security of their own building. So that would be one thing. The other thing would be there's a premise that you have that the disclosure of information will end speculation, right? Mm-hmm. So President Obama offered up his birth certificate. That still hasn't.
Really?
Solved
We're not done with that yet?
We're not done with that yet.
Really?
No, we're not done with that.
Her
yet.
mom giving the birth announcement in the Honolulu paper wasn't enough.
No, it's never enough.
Ahead of time.
It is never enough. It's never enough. So I got called yesterday by an LA Times reporter on Mayor Pete worked for McKinsey, the international consulting firm, for several years before. I think it was before he went into the military, and then before he started running for public office. And he, as part of his employment with McKinsey, he signed a non-disclosure agreement, which, let's assume all, important employees of McKinsey sign a non-disclosure agreement, which means that he can't speak of the things that he did. He can talk about the fact that he was employed by McKinsey, but he can't say what he did. Now, non-disclosure agreements are pretty typical, and they're sort of the way that the way that a lot of companies operate, and they have very good reasons for having non-disclosure agreements. Usually, it's because they've got trade secrets. They don't want their competitors to know what they do. Their clients might not want the world to know what it is that they hired McKinsey for, or even the fact that they had hired McKinsey.
Right.
For a variety of reasons. So there are good reasons to keep this information disclosed. But the problem is there have been a number of news reports about some shady things that McKinsey has done and some shady clients that McKinsey has represented, autocratic governments, pharmaceutical companies, things like that. And the public would like to know, Mayor Pete, what did you do when you worked for McKinsey? And Mayor Pete would say, well, I can't tell you because I'm under a non-disclosure agreement with McKinsey. So I was gaming out with the reporter for the LA Times. Well, so what's Mayor Pete's best play here, and what is McKinsey's best play here? They could continue to say, McKinsey could say, well, sorry, Mayor Pete, you signed this contract and you can't give it up. And Mayor Pete might, we don't know what Mayor Pete actually did for McKinsey. Maybe he did something shady. Maybe he didn't. But maybe it's in his best interest to say, I can't say anything.
Right.
It's an interesting dilemma. So maybe Mayor Pete would say, well, doggone it, the public is right. They do have a right to know. So I'm going to say I'm going to just give a sense of who it is that I worked for, and I'll disclose something. And maybe McKinsey would be like, okay, we won't sue you for that. That seems fine. We understand the dilemma that you're in. But if he gives out anything, that's just going to send 1,000 reporters scurrying around trying to figure out, okay, well, what did he do for them? So any information that he gives is not going to actually close things off and figure and answer the question that people might have over that.
I'll let this go, but just the Pentagon, just one more last thing, because I know how you steered away from me. Right. You wanted to get me away from the subject because I won't let go. It's the only one part of the building that was reinforced recently. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yes,
I think I knew that at one time.
Yeah,
but I
the
don't know it
only
now.
section of the Pentagon that was reinforced at one time, and every pilot would tell you you could never steer a plane into that low of that type of flight pattern into it. So
right.
Okay.
Well, so, let's imagine what other speculations there could be. Because one of the interesting things about conspiracy theories is how, on the one hand, we imagine, sometimes correctly, sometimes unfairly, the government is terrible, that they're completely inefficient, corrupt, they never do anything right. But for a conspiracy theory about the government to work, you have to assume not just a sort of normal level of ability, but an extraordinary amount of ability. That you can not only engage in a series of planned acts where you know what the end will be and the end result is perfect,
right,
but that you can keep secret how all that occurred. So, it's possible that the contractor just screwed the government on it, right? That it was supposed to be reinforced, but it wasn't reinforced well. And that would be a scandal within the Pentagon to disclose information about that. So there might be other reasons for that occurring that would be consistent with the Pentagon not wanting to disclose much in the way of information relating to that.
But it's funny, we say the government can't keep secrets. Didn't we really learn from the Gulf of Tonkin recently that was a complete lie?
Right, yeah.
And they
it's
kept
not just recently.
And they kept that a secret, or just, did we mention that didn't happen?
Right.
And that's why we went to war. So you can understand why people feel this about 9/11.
Exactly.
Of course they'll lie to you.
So to be clear, even if I don't believe in the 9/11 conspiracy theories, the tendency to distrust the government, I totally get.
Yeah.
Because the government will lie to us, with some
straight to
degree of
your
frequency.
face.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. And about important things.
Right.
And every time that they do that, they add to the possibility of people down the line saying, well, you're corrupt. So the idea, for example, of President Trump saying that there's a deep state out to get him, it is easy to say, well, he's crazy. The people in the intelligence services and the people in the State Department, they're all, and in the Pentagon, they're all, upright and they always tell us the truth, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, we have a long history in this country of their lying to us about all manner of things, which makes every effort at times to say, well, no, we need to trust the government, really problematic. And so I think the best response to that is to be deeply skeptical when the government gives you an official response that seems not necessarily to align with the facts. I think the wrong thing to do is to assume that there must be a conspiracy. I mean, you can hold that out as a possibility, but to assume that the government's lying means that there is a conspiracy going on of dramatic proportions, I think is it can send you down rabbit holes that are not good for you and ultimately not good for the country.
Well, and you're right about with President Trump and the deep state. I mean, obviously that could even explain the death of Kennedy. I mean, right? I mean, they didn't like what he was saying. They didn't like what his brother was saying. Right. And you're going to do what?
Right.
And
right.
Castro wasn't thrilled about what you were saying.
I know. Nobody was thrilled.
Right?
The mafia wasn't thrilled.
So when President Trump does talk about a deep state, I don't know. How deep is it?
Yeah. No, I know. I think the problem is there's never just one deep state, right? I mean, as with the rest of the country and the rest of the world, there are lots of competing interests involved in all manner of things going on within the State Department, within the intelligence services and the like, and all manner of conflictual approaches to different things that are trying to get their sway.
No more Roach on Florida TV.